Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. So I love spy novels. I love James Bond movies. I love Jack Ryan stories. I spend actually probably way too much time reading biographies of spies and autobiographies of spies and watching shows about spies. And for all that love of that world, I always thought I would have made a terrible spy. In fact, if I was thinking about which job in the world I would be least suited to, it would be spying, because I am a worrier. I can worry about anything. I could worry for the Olympic team. And the idea of being in a profession where you were continually actually had genuine cause to fear being found out, and you were continually having to pretend to be something you weren't and not be somewhere you were, seemed to me like a recipe for disaster. Until one day, I was sitting on my porch, and it was just a particularly nice day, and the sun was shining on my face, and I was feeling so peaceful. And it suddenly occurred to me in that moment, if being a spy felt like this, I'd be a great spy. And I realized that I had just assumed being a spy came with a particular feeling. But what the inside-out understanding points to, what the principles behind the human experience point to, is that we don't feel experience. We can't feel a job. We can't feel being a spy. We feel thought, and then we project that feeling onto circumstances. And so the reason I thought I'd be a terrible spy is because the feelings that I projected onto being a spy were terrible feelings. Now here's another slightly more maybe realistic example. I never wanted to have kids. I thought that having kids meant your life was over and you now had to live for the next generation. And I grew up in a small town where people would get each other pregnant very young and then live for the next generation. And at some point, and I'm sure there's some weird psychological explanation for all this, I decided I was going to be the kid that got out. I was going to be the next generation that everybody had kept sacrificing for. And so when my wife came to me and told me that she was pregnant, the week I was about to open in my first West End show, which is like Broadway, I thought, oh my God, the worst thing that could possibly have happened has happened. And I was devastated. And even though it was very clear to me, there was nothing, we weren't going to try and not be pregnant anymore, I just thought my life was over. But fortunately, I kind of know I'm wrong a lot. So even though I was sure that this was going to be the worst thing that could possibly happen, I was also pretty sure that I was exaggerating in my own mind. And so I got through the 9 months. Now, my wife reassures me I was not as horrible as I remember myself to be about it. But I was not the encouraging, excited father that I'm sure she would have hoped that I had been. Until the moment our firstborn, Oliver, was born. And they handed him to me. And I fell in love. I fell in love so hard, so quickly. And it was the funniest thing, because in 30 seconds, I went from dreading the next 50 years to being so excited to get to be in love for that long, that much. And I realized as the first few years of Oliver's life unfolded, and many of the things I had imagined really happened, we didn't get very much sleep. He did throw up all over us. It was kind of a killer to our social life. I did have to make some different career decisions. In fact, it was some of the most gorgeous experiences I've ever had in my life. And in the same way as I had projected these horrible feelings onto being a spy, and so just assumed it would be that, and then saw, well, I could be a spy without those feelings, and then it would be fine. I didn't realize that it wasn't not sleeping that I'd been dreading. It wasn't having to make changes in my career that I'd been dreading. It was the horrible feelings I imagined would come with those things. And the reality was, they were accompanied largely by the most beautiful feelings of love and connection. And so they all wound up being beautiful experiences. Now, what's the point? The point is, there are all sorts of things in your life that you are probably dreading and avoiding because you think you know what they'll be like. You think you know what will happen, and you think you know how you will feel about it. But what if you're wrong? What if the feeling is not a given? What if the feeling is up for grabs moment by moment? What if you have no idea what it will feel like? And even if from time to time it feels the way you thought it would, it feels the way you thought it would because you're thinking about it. In a way, the feeling in which we live our lives is like the soundtrack. There's an old movie, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. And essentially, it involves lots of scenes of tomatoes. And people going, ah, when they see the tomatoes. And there's actually another one with a tire, where a tire kind of kills an entire town. But in both those movies, it occurred to me in watching them that if the soundtrack didn't have scary music, they would just be funny or ridiculous or even kind of cool. Ooh, look, the happy tire is coming to town. Well, the soundtrack of our lives is made of feeling. And when we think about what something's going to be like, we often put on a scary soundtrack. We think it's going to come with feelings we don't like. But we can be at peace and in love with anything. And so more often than not, when we let the soundtrack of our lives, the feeling of our lives, be the well-being that is already inside us, it doesn't so much matter what happened. It doesn't so much matter what we do or don't do and how things turn out. We get to enjoy all of it, not because we should, but because we can. And so while I may have made a terrible spy because I don't know that I'd be very good at it, I've come to see that we all have the potential to enjoy anything and everything that comes our way. And to quote Sid Banks, as I often do in these podcasts, if the only thing people learned was not to be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. And when we see that our experience doesn't come with a factory preset feeling, then there's never a reason to be afraid of any experience that might come your way. Have fun, learn heaps, and I'll talk to you soon.